Justin Kemp leading his pregnant wife, Ellie Cruson, into the nursery prepared for their unborn daughter. The couple then joins their guests to celebrate pre-Christmas duties and spend time together. The next morning, upon arriving at the courthouse, Justin notices Faith, the prosecutor in James's case, drop her phone. For Faith, this case is a major stepping stone in her career toward becoming district attorney. During this trial, Justin and other citizens have the chance to serve as jurors if selected. Before the jury selection, Faith discusses the case with Eric, the defense attorney. Faith believes the case is a slam dunk and proposes a quick resolution. James pleads guilty and gets around 20 years instead of a life sentence, given his previous convictions. However, Eric insists on his client's innocence. The selection begins with the judge asking candidates if they have any personal motives that might prevent them from being impartial. Justin candidly admits he'd prefer not to serve so he can spend time with his pregnant wife, but the judge finds this insufficient to excuse him. The lawyers probe further into candidates' personal lives, particularly focusing on family status and any history of violence. By the end of the process, Justin is assigned a jury number and joins the panel tasked with deciding the defendant's fate. That evening, while Justin recounts the day to his wife, Faith addresses voters at a bar. Later, she and Eric, unhappy with her turn to politics, have drinks together, reminiscing about shared university professors. The following day, the lawyers present the details of the case to the jury. A year earlier, on October 25th, the defendant, the victim, and her girlfriend, Kendall, had gone to the Rowdy's Refuge Bar off Old Curry Road. They drank heavily and had a public argument. Kendall left on foot, walking into the rainy night, and James followed her. According to the prosecution, he caught up and killed her. The defense claims he went home to sober up and talk things through in the morning. Regardless, Kendall's bloodied body was found the next morning under a bridge, lying on the rocks. As the details emerge, Justin recalls that some evening, at the same bar, he had bought alcohol before driving home. Nearing the bridge, he was distracted by his phone and hit something in the dark. Checking his car, he saw damage, but no body. Seeing a sign warning about wildlife, Justin convinced himself he had hit a deer, which limped into the night and drove home at peace. Realizing he likely didn't hit a deer that night, Justin vomits during a break in the courthouse bathroom. Marcus, another juror, finds him and asks if he's okay. Justin lies, claiming the photos from the crime scene made him sick. That evening, Justin attends an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. His sponsor, Larry, notices something is eating at him, but Justin isn't ready to share. Later, Justin goes to his office, where he works as a journalist, and searches for information about the penalty for hit-and-run manslaughter. Before he can read much, the janitor arrives, forcing him to leave. The next hearing is dedicated to witness testimonies. One of the attendees recounts a quarrel between the victim and the defendant, and the bartender corroborates the story. A tourist describes finding the body during a hike. A doctor testifies that the cause of death was a head injury caused by a blunt object, and the nature of the injury is definitely violent. The defense attorney argues that the victim, walking in the rain on high heels, could have fallen and fatally injured herself. But the doctor considers this version unlikely. The final witness is a local old man who lives on Old Road. According to him, around midnight, he looked out the window and saw a man on the bridge who glanced around before leaving. When asked if he recognizes the person among those present, the old man scans the room. Justin prudently bends down to pick up a dropped pen, and the witness points to James. After the hearing, Justin seeks advice from Larry, who is not only a former alcoholic, but also a practicing lawyer. Larry charges a token fee to legally formalize the agreement between lawyer and client. Justin recounts everything, including his past troubles with driving under the influence. At the time of the incident, he had been sober, though he bought alcohol at the bar but did not drink it. A full confession would not spare him from the severity of the law or a hefty sentence, potentially up to life imprisonment. At the next hearing, the defendant testifies. He repeats the defense's argument and adds that he loved Kendall and would never harm her, even when her drunken antics skillfully begged for a sobering response. The defendant insists he has turned his life around and changed. Finally, the defense attorney plays a video recorded by the girl on that fateful evening. The footage shows them both appearing happy, with no visible signs of serious conflict. The prosecutor counters with a single point. One does not leave a loved one to wander drunk in the rain at night. Both sides address the jury, arguing for diametrically opposing verdicts. During deliberation, Denise volunteers to be the jury foreperson. As she has ample experience, this is her third time serving as a juror. She proposes a vote to determine everyone's stance, reasoning that if there is no unanimous decision, there is no point in prolonging the process. Almost all 12 jurors agree that the defendant is guilty. The final, decisive word belongs to Justin, who knows this is not the truth. He insists they must discuss the situation more thoroughly. They are deciding a man's fate, after all. Reluctantly acknowledging his point, the jurors begin deliberating. First, they consider whether the elderly witness might have been mistaken about seeing someone on the bridge in the rain at night. This idea is supported by Harold, a former police officer, who suggests that confirmation bias may be at play. The police picked the most obvious suspect, showed him to the old man, and the witness agreed he had seen him. Other possibilities were simply not explored. Next, the jury discusses the idea that the girl might not have been killed by a blunt object but hit by a car, after which the driver fled in shock. While they discuss Harold's version, Justin accidentally spills his coffee. The others ask how he would have conducted the investigation, but the retired detective doesn't have time to respond. The workday ends. After the session, Justin follows Harold. The former cop heads to the bridge where the victim's body was found to take a closer look. There, he notices a colleague juror's car, but is forced to return home due to a call from his wife. Ducking down, Justin hopes he hasn't been seen. At home, Justin consults his wife about selling his green Toyota 4Runner, but doing so in a way that conceals the bodywork repairs after an accident. On Monday, the jurors return to court. Justin is stopped and asked about his weekend. He has discovered that, since October 25th of the previous year, several cars were involved in accidents that didn't make it into police reports. Among them is Justin's Toyota, which he used to follow Harold. The old man asks Justin to help with the investigation by interviewing the car owners in time for the deadline. During the inquiry, Justin drops his documents in front of a bailiff, revealing that he has violated jury rules by conducting his own investigation instead of relying solely on the official case materials. The guilty are brought before the judge. After reviewing the circumstances, the judge dismisses Harold from his duties as a juror. Justin, being the least culpable, is allowed to remain on the jury. As he exits, the former detective speaks with Prosecutor Faith, implying that she is handling her job poorly and is willing to convict an innocent man just to close the case. His words strike a chord with Faith. In her free time, she begins cross-referencing the evidence collected by Justin. Meanwhile, Faith asks Justin why the old man was removed. He briefly explains that Harold was developing a theory that the victim had been accidentally hit by a driver. One of the jurors, a medical student, analyzes the autopsy data, which confirms the impact was caused by an SUV. Another new juror, a fan of detective shows, points out that while the defendant seems like the perfect suspect, it doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty. Analyzing the bridge's location, the jurors conclude that someone could have taken a detour and mistakenly thought they hit a deer at night. Justin then states that, with these doubts, they cannot be certain James killed the girl. He proposes a revote. The votes are split evenly, but it's still insufficient. The verdict must be unanimous. This causes another divide in opinions. Marcus warns that he will not change his stance, firmly believing the defendant is guilty. He wears a gang tattoo on his neck, one associated with the Rijak gang, which traffics drugs in the city. Marcus knows this all too well, as his younger brother was part of such a gang and died as a teenager. Justin tries to convince him that people can change, sharing that he was once an alcoholic. He recalls how he nearly died in a car accident, which pushed him to quit drinking, with the help of his sponsor Ellie, who later became his wife. However, Marcus is unconvinced that the story of a recovering alcoholic applies to a street drug dealer. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Faith visits the car owners listed in Harold's notes to clarify the circumstances under which they needed bodywork repairs. She eliminates one suspect after another. Faith then visits the elderly witness. During their conversation, she realizes the man simply craved attention and wanted to feel useful. So when the police told him they had caught the killer, he eagerly confirmed he had seen the suspect on the bridge. Unable to reach a unanimous verdict, the jurors request the judge to organize a field trip to the crime scene to better understand the situation. Although it's unconventional, the authorities grant their request. Faith later visits a pregnant Ellie, unaware she is Justin's wife. Ellie never changed her last name after marriage. After speaking with her and confirming that her husband hit a deer in another area, Faith leaves, not noticing a suspicious juror's face in a photograph behind Ellie. At the same time, Justin meets again with Larry. The lawyer warns him that he won't be safe until the case is closed. The stakes are too high. If the jury fails to reach a verdict, the investigation may continue, potentially implicating Justin himself. At home, Justin inspects his car when Ellie enters the garage. She asks who and where he hit. Justin neither admits nor denies it, leaving her to realize the truth. Ellie is most concerned that he had been at a bar and may have been drinking. Justin insists he didn't drink, though he had been tempted. Not long before, Ellie suffered a miscarriage of twins, and they were both still grieving the loss of their unborn children. Plagued by doubts, Faith asks Eric to arrange a meeting with the defendant in prison so she can personally ask him about his innocence. The man swears he didn't kill Kendall, but this conversation cannot be used as evidence, even if the prosecutor wanted it to. The jurors are taken on a field trip. First, they head to Barrow, where Justin recalls sitting in front of a glass that fateful evening, tempted to drown his bitterness, but ultimately resisting the fall into the blue abyss. Marcus notices his strange look and approaches him for a conversation on the bridge. Marcus claims he's figured Justin out. Justin can't possibly know for sure that the defendant is innocent. Therefore, they must find the former dealer guilty. Back in the courtroom, the jury finally delivers their verdict. Justin, however, is missing from his seat. The judge reads the decision. James Sate is found guilty of murder. The session concludes. Meanwhile, Justin is at the hospital with his wife. Later at home, as he watches over their sleeping baby, he hears police sirens outside and begins to panic, fearing they've come for him. But nothing happens. Soon after, the new father attends James's sentencing. Ellie gives him a final lecture. A former gang member doesn't deserve to ruin a good man's life. The defendant is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Prosecutor Faith receives flowers and a thank you note from the victim's parents who, interestingly, have different last names. Spotting Justin in the courtroom, she pieces the facts together and finds information about his wife, the owner of a green Toyota Camry, hinting that she knows the truth. Justin argues that one tragic accident could destroy the life of a good man and his family who depend on him, while also ruining the career of a prosecutor who imprisoned an innocent man if the truth ever came out. But, as he adds, considering the convicted man was still a criminal, things become far less black and white. Deep in thought, Faith leaves for the district attorney's office, where Eric congratulates her on her promotion. Justin visits Kendall's grave, leaving flowers before returning home to care for his daughter. It seems everything is over, but suddenly there's a knock at the door. Outside stands Prosecutor Faith.